Hello, everyone. My name is Faizan Khan, and I am a permit engineer in the Office of Water Quality at the Arkansas Energy and Environment Division of Environmental Quality. Today, I'll be guiding you through an informational session concerning the discharge permit with permit tracking number AR0053210 and the public hearing associated with that permit. And this is all for the Paradise Valley Subdivision Wastewater Treatment Plant. The public hearing itself is scheduled for May 18th, 2022 at 2 p.m. at the DEQ headquarters in North Little Rock. So without further ado, let's get started. So listed here is some basic general information about the permit. The legal name of the permit applicant is Pulaski County Property Owners Multipurpose Improvement District number 2021-2. The name of the facility itself is Paradise Valley Subdivision Wastewater Treatment Plant. The permit application received is for a proposed individual NPDES wastewater discharge permit. NPDES stands for the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, and it is a federal requirement as authorized by the Clean Water Act. The United States Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA for short, has delegated authority to the Division of Environmental Quality to manage the NPDES program in the state of Arkansas. And it is this NPDES delegated authority under which DEQ permits these wastewater treatment systems. The facility that the permit is for would be a new wastewater treatment plant for this new proposed residential subdivision. And the proposed discharge from the facility that the permit would authorize treated domestic wastewater. DEQ first received the permit application for this project initially on September 2nd, 2020. So here is listed some facility specifics. So the proposed wastewater treatment plant will have a design flow of 50,000 gallons per day with 300 connections to the complete treatment system. The wastewater treatment system at the facility is set to be designed to include some components for treatment for wastewater treatment, which include a bar screen, a grit removal, a flow equalization chamber, extended aeration activated sludge aeration chamber, 2 clarifiers, a sludge holding chamber, filtration, and chlorine disinfection with dechlorination included. So the domestic wastewater from the residential subdivision would flow to this wastewater treatment plant with this proposed wastewater treatment system installed. And the wastewater will then go through this sequence of components to be treated. The plant will be located on Roland Cutoff Road in Roland, Arkansas, which is located in Pulaski County. The image shown here is from the permit application itself. It shows a satellite image of the area, and you can see the property boundary line in this yellow line with the proposed treatment plant location. Listed right here. This is the wastewater treatment plant, and the point of discharge, which is labeled as outfall 001, is also labeled here, along with the facility gate and entrance right over here. And then here is Roland Cutoff Road labeled for reference. And here in this next map, you can see the facility's discharge point as this gray pin right here. And the path of the discharge is shown here in this red line. It actually starts from the point of discharge right here at that pin, and then the discharge is proposed to go from the facility, and then it will enter this unnamed tributary of Mill Bayou, which will then flow into Mill Bayou all the way down this path into ultimately the Arkansas River. And we'll talk about the permit review process in just a little bit, but based on a current review of these receiving waters that you see here, none of these water bodies is listed as impaired for any pollutant or parameter. And so taking a look at the permit application requirements, as part of a complete application for this individual NPDES permit, the applicant was required to submit a whole host of forms and documentation and information, and that includes DEQ Form 1, location maps, topographic maps, FEMA floodplain maps. Some of the maps shown in this presentation already were from the application itself, like I mentioned. EPA Form 2E was also submitted, and this is the typical EPA form required for non-municipal domestic sewage treatment works, or NDSTW for short. And those treatment works include facilities like subdivisions, for example, such as this particular facility. And because this facility falls into the category of a non-municipal domestic sewage treatment works, the applicant was also required to submit non-domestic sewage treatment works trust fund requirements. And this includes a list of additional information, such as a breakdown of operation costs, capital expenditures, a financial plan showing the permittee's ability to operate and maintain the treatment plan for 5 years, a certification that all the information submitted within the materials and the forms is true and accurate, a legal description of the service area, which could be a plat for the service area, a list of the drinking water sources for the service area, and a certification of compliance that the permit applicant has complied with all the local zoning requirements, local planning authority regulations, local permitting requirements, as well as any other applicable local regulations that are required for both the construction and the operation of the facility. The applicant also submitted a disclosure statement, as well as more technical information about the process flow and the wastewater treatment system that the facility will be designed to have. So here you can see the Office of Water Quality's permit review process as a whole. In general, the Office of Water Quality has a very significant permit review process after a permit application is received by the office. And so what this slide is meant to show is give a brief overview of what that review process looks like. So by definition, this is the same process we've gone through with this particular permit application for Paradise Valley subdivision as well. So as a whole, as a process, once the complete permit application was received, the process was followed by these steps that you see here. So first, it involved a thorough technical review of all the received application items, pretty much a lot of the items that you saw earlier in the previous slide with the permit application requirements. And then we also do a technical review of the receiving stream that the facility is proposing to discharge into. We review the stream for any impairments, like I mentioned, or special conditions. And like I mentioned before, there currently are not any impairments or special conditions that are designated for the receiving water bodies that this facility is proposing to discharge to. The technical review also includes reviewing the facility's proposed treatment system, operator license information, and so on. And very importantly, the review process also includes performing a water quality model. And we'll talk a little bit more about what this model means and what it entails in just a little bit. Finally, after all this information is reviewed, a draft of the permit is written up. Following that, once the draft is written up, the draft is then reviewed, and this review involves engineering peer reviews and then also administrator proofreading. So after that, the water quality model is also reviewed, and then the draft goes through a series of reviews by the engineer supervisor, senior operations manager, and the associate director. So it's a whole host of reviews that the draft goes through. And then after that, there's a 5 business day permittee review period. And the purpose of this permittee review is essentially primarily just to check for typographical errors or math errors, any misinterpretations of process descriptions, and or any other factual errors relating to the application and the draft permit. Once that's done, the permit draft is sent out for public notice. The public notice is provided for DEQ to receive comments on the draft permit decision. The draft permit comment period is set for 30 days, and a hearing may be held when there is significant public interest. Comments are received during the 30-day comment period and also at the time of the public hearing if a hearing is held. The hearing I'm referencing here is the one that is scheduled and will be held on Wednesday, May 18th. And this is around where we are in the process for the Paradise Valley permit right now. I should note that DEQ did hold a second 30-day draft permit comment period. And the reason for this was that additional information was submitted by the applicant which had not yet been provided at the time of the first public comment period. And it was determined that a second comment period was necessary to allow public review of the new information, which had not been available during the first 30-day comment period. And then there's the final review step of the process. We verify proofs of publication and verify that fees are paid. At this stage in the process, DEQ also considers public comments that are received and prepares a written response to the comments to be included with the final permit decision. The decision could be approval of the permit, or it may be denial of a permit based on the information presented in the comments. The decision and comment responses are provided to the applicant and to the commenters on the record who submitted timely comments that meet the Rule 8 procedures. The commenters that submitted during the established comment periods will have standing should they decide to file a permit appeal. I would suggest reviewing Rule 8, which is titled Administrative Procedures, as well as the Arkansas Pollution Control and Ecology Commission website for details and information on deadlines for filing permit appeals. So to give a brief timeline of some of the major points along the permit process, here's a brief overview of the permit activity so far. On September 2nd, 2020 is when DEQ first received the application's submission. And so the application was reviewed, the technical review, a lot of the review process that we just talked about, it took place, and then an initial draft was made and public noticed on July 7, 2021. This is what I was talking about earlier. There was a first 30-day public notice review, and then after some additional information was completed, we received all additional application materials for the permit by January 18, 2022. And because of that, the draft was revised, and that revised draft was then public notice for a second 30-day permit draft public notice review period. And that's what began on March 6, 2022. And then finally, as a result of that 30-day permit public notice period is when we received reviews or requests for public hearings. And that's what is scheduled for May 18, 2022. And so this is kind of where we're leading up to right now. So in general, an NPDES permit contains limits, monitoring and reporting requirements, and other provisions that are put in place to protect the water quality in the water bodies that a facility is discharging to. So here in this table, here's what those monitoring requirements and limits look like, specifically for the Paradise Valley Subdivision wastewater treatment plant that are included in the draft permit. As I mentioned before, during the permit technical review process, a water quality model was performed. And to give a basic description of the modeling process, the discharge and the receiving stream are evaluated with a Streeter-Phelps dissolved oxygen, or DO, modeling program. And that's done to determine how the discharge affects the DO in the receiving water. The model is performed at critical conditions, such as the critical low flow of the receiving stream and the design flow of the discharge. And the model ultimately projects the in-stream concentration of the DO after interacting with the discharge from the wastewater treatment system. And these model projections are used to determine the discharge permit limits that are protective of the DO water quality standards of the receiving stream. The limits determined to be appropriate for the permit are then further evaluated to ensure protection against toxicity to aquatic life, and are determined to be protective of drinking water supply, industrial, agricultural, and recreational use designations, which are set by Arkansas water quality standards found in Arkansas Pollution Control and Ecology Commission Rule 2. So to summarize, these monitoring requirements exist, and the permit would require lab samples and results of these listed parameters to be submitted to DEQ on a monthly basis. So as a whole, DEQ has full authority to compel compliance, whether formally and informally, and that may include corrective action plans or engineering reviews and even system repairs. So now let's talk briefly about some select permit requirements that are included in the draft permit. Part 2.5 of the permit includes financial assurance fee requirements that the facility would be subject to, since the facility is considered a non-domestic sewage treatment works. And the permittee would be required to comply with all applicable financial assurance requirements, and that includes payment of the required trust fund contribution fees that are specified in Arkansas Code Annotated Part 8-4-203B. And as mentioned in the condition, failure to pay these required financial assurance fees can be reason for DEQ to initiate action to terminate this permit and under the provisions in the Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR for short, specifically in Title 40, which is the title that defines protection of environment. And so those specific provisions can be found in 40 CFR parts 122.64 and 124.5D, and they're adopted in the Arkansas Pollution Control and Ecology Commission Rules 6 and 9. Moving along, additional permit requirements that are included in the draft permit, and these are conditions of note. These include Part 2.7 of the permit, which includes a provision that limits the number of connections to the treatment system to no more than 300 connections. And any connections outside of that described service area or connections that cause an exceedance of the treatment works' design flow, they are prohibited without written approval. Additionally, the permit already has flow monitoring requirements, and it also includes a condition that's listed as Part 2.6, and that requires the permittee to evaluate the performance of the treatment plant as it's used over its life. And that would require the facility to evaluate if the plant is appropriately designed to treat the wastewater it's receiving, even as conditions change, and to make modifications or improvements to the plant as necessary. Another permit requirement of note is listed as Part 2.9 in the permit, which states that before commencement of construction activity on the site of the wastewater treatment plant, the permittee shall provide a completed Phase 1 cultural resources study for the proposed areas of disturbance necessary to construct the facility. The study shall be provided to both the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program and the DEQ Office of Water Quality. The study must be reviewed and approved by both agencies before ground disturbing construction activities may begin. The permittee shall address any comments from either agency and shall be responsible for any plan adjustments deemed necessary to accommodate cultural preservation measures during construction or operation of the facility. And ultimately, this condition is a direct result of information that was provided to DEQ. And this was information that indicates that there are cultural resources that may exist in the area. And this condition was placed in the draft permit as a result of these concerns. Finally, let's talk about what the scope of this permit is meant to be, essentially what this permit is and what it is not. So what this permit is and what it is meant to be is an authorization to discharge treated domestic wastewater from this wastewater treatment plant. What this permit is not and what it is not meant to be is it is not meant to be a floodplain permit. It is not meant to be a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit. It is not meant to be a zoning decision. And finally, it is not meant to be a wetlands determination. And that concludes this informational session. As mentioned in the beginning, the public hearing for this permit will be on May 18th, 2022 at 2 p.m. Central Time. The location of the hearing will be in the commission room, which is located on the first floor of the DEQ headquarters building in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Thank you for watching this informational session, and most importantly, thank you for your participation in the DEQ permitting process.